everyone, and welcome to this webinar um, on AI and how it's going to shape up the coming year. I've got a very, very exciting panel over here. I'll just do a quick round of introductions while people are still joining in. So we are very quickly approaching 50 participants over here. A lot of you might already know me. I am Manan. I'm co-founder and CEO of Recruiter Flow, and I am based in super sunny, beautiful Bangalore in the southern part of India. I'm joined by Sahil, who's co-founder and CEO of MetaView. He's based in London. Sahil is an AI wizard and has a history of working at Uber in the product team. He speaks a lot about AI on his LinkedIn. Super interesting. If you're not already following him, which is quite unlikely, I recommend that you do. And we also have Blake, who is founder of Hyperdrive Recruiting. He's been in the game for about 13 years now. Blake uses both Recruiter Flow and MetaView and has very interesting thoughts about implementing AI into his day-to-day as a founder, as an operator. And Blake's joining us from North Carolina, right? Which is, and eagerly awaiting spring over there. So we've got a panel that is spread across 3 different continents and 3 different time zones. So yeah, there we go. I'm going to start. I'm going to start. So the way we are going to structure this is that we are going to have a conversation between the 3 of us, and there is a Q&A session that is going to be towards the end of the conversation. So whenever you have any questions, there's going to be a Q&A section on your Zoom. So just post your question there, and we will try and answer your questions at the end of the meeting. So there we have it. We'll just dive right in then. Blake, Sahil, thank you so much for joining me today.
That's something I hear.
Sahil, I'll start with you, right? So you are, for those who don't know MetaView, MetaView is an AI-enabled note taker that is specifically built for recruiters. So it joins your, Google Meet calls and Teams calls and Zoom calls, and transcribes, summarizes, and gives you amazing summary of your meetings, right? So Sahil has done a lot of work on this front, right? And he's at the forefront of the changes that AI is bringing. A lot has changed, right? Ever since OpenAI came up with ChatGPT, and the pace of change is still dizzyingly fast, right? What do you foresee, right? In terms of AI and its impact in simplifying recruitment and simplifying processes, and what do you think AI can accomplish this year?
Yeah, cool. So you started with the big question, right? What do you predict the future? So one of it. It's definitely a time where a lot of these predictions are going to be wrong. So whatever I'm going to say here, I don't think people should don't hold it against me, because I think even frankly the leaders of these big foundational AI companies, they don't know a ton about what the next sort of maybe 2 to 5 years hold. So I think it's very, very it's a moving feast, as we would say over here. I think the areas where we are most excited about, and therefore, of course, where I think certainly certain parts of the market will evolve, are really come down to 2 things. One is efficiency. So, it's really been the reason, and we actually polled our customers, and 80% of them adopted MetaView for efficiency reasons. It was do more with less time. It was give me some more hours back in my day, or give me some time back so I can go and work on a higher leverage activity. It was really about that efficiency. And then the second is around precision, which I think is the one that we as an industry, and actually I would also say MetaView as even a product has done less of so far. So efficiency, I think, is continuing more of the same. It's really as we're getting building up more intuition around how can AI help in our workflows, but also as the models are getting more and more powerful and they can do more of the workflow autonomously. That's a constantly moving feast. So I think there'll be a lot there. Anyone that's been watching the reasoning models that again DeepSeek and OpenAI especially have launched recently, or the computer use or operator launches from Anthropic and from OpenAI, where the AI can actually go and use your browser and do tasks for you. Like obviously that opens up a whole trove of thoughts around, well, what are some things I do that I navigate my browser to do that actually maybe now AI can help with? Sourcing is probably one of the most obvious ones. Like, are there some sort of like construction of lists and whatnot that you can start to do through AI? So I think that would be really interesting on the efficiency side. Where we're starting to think more at those on this precision side, which is given we now have so much more data than we've ever had, given we now are capturing every sort of, word every candidate I've ever spoken to has said to me, and given I have a bunch of data, from other conversations as well, how can we leverage that data to detect things that otherwise you wouldn't be able to, that are going to help me make a better decision, a better decision about which candidates to put in front of my clients, or a better decision about which candidates to go back to, maybe when I've got a different rec where they might be suitable for. There's a lot of these sort of tasks essentially that, folks like Blake, and Blake, obviously you can keep me honest here and tell me if this doesn't resonate, but a lot of tasks that folks do that often relies on like racking one's brain, or just thinking, you know what, F it, I'm just going to sort of start from a fresh sheet of paper on this, for sourcing for this client, because actually my historic data is not that valuable. I think a lot of that will go away as well, as we sort of get deeper into understanding how to accelerate folks like Blake and others in the work that they're doing.
Wonderful. There are a few things that I want to double click on their side, but Blake, what are you expecting from 2025?
A lot, when it comes to AI, I think about it a lot. My brain kind of oscillates between, holy shit, we're all screwed. Like, what's the point of doing anything? And then the other side is like, all this is pretty overhyped. We're all going to be okay. If we really get down to like depression level unemployment because of AI, the government will just step in and, they'll just ban it. Right. So, I have these conversations with Gemini. That's my AI of choice here. And I talk with it all the time on my phone, and I'm just, it gives me some ideas. I use it a lot for like, automating the job descriptions and, creating fancy Boolean searches and doing new market research and, content and things like that. But, oftentimes for the real, like, what should I do today type questions, I'm just kind of disappointed by the vanilla responses that I get. So whenever we get to the point where the AI is actually pushing back on the questions that you're asking, like, whenever it gets to the point where it says, hold up, why are you asking me about the pros and cons of monk fruit extract versus stevia, as your sweetener right now? Like, shouldn't you be hitting the phones? Like, I'll send you this answer after 5 p.m. Like right now, let's focus on recruiting. Like when we get to that point, then I'll be like, oh, okay, Jarvis, we've hit a point here where, now I'm willing to pay like $200 a month, but so far I haven't really seen anything like that mind blowing. It's still just like little time savers here and there, little efficiencies. And then I wonder, like, what are we doing with this time that we're saving? Like, is that just, like, we really using that time, or is that just like more time to take a break and scroll TikTok for a minute?
But
So,
yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right. Right? Like, I mean, if you look at the history of, right from industrial revolution all till now, right? Like we increasingly, more advanced technology has given more time back to people. And that is why we have way more entertainment today than, maybe 200 years back, because it's just a constant trend. Because now we have so much abundance of time, resources, money, right? Like that we can spend towards, keeping ourselves entertained, right? I get that. And on that front, like, right? Like, the memory window of any models, right? Like is not probably very, very good right now. So it doesn't really remember a lot of context that, hey, Blake is a headhunter. It's 2 p.m. He should be hitting the phone and not worrying about which sweetener to use. But we have, our marketing team uses ChatGPT. Our product team uses they also, I think, use ChatGPT, and sales team uses Gemini. But just the other day, right, like we kind of put a product doc into in OpenAI and just said, hey, you know what? Can you think of some other use cases? And there is like a long history of conversations, right, like that we've had with ChatGPT about different features that we are building, and all of that, and it just came up with use cases that we didn't even think of, right? So it's improving. It's probably a little bit far away from it being your coach, but one step at a time. Now, Sal, you kind of mentioned something. I want to kind of double click because that's, I think, a very important use case, right? Like, hey, which candidates should I submit to clients, right? Like, so the precision part of of your answer, right? Like which candidates that I should talk to again, which candidates should I submit to client. Help me understand, right? Like, how will AI help me make some of those decisions with more precision?
You actually used a really relevant phrase actually in your reaction to what Blake was saying there around the memory window or the context window is sort of is another phrase you can use, and that's essentially going to be the answer. Whereas a lot of the time, people right now, their interaction with an AI is sort of, it's almost in this moment, I'm going to have this one interaction with you, and of course, you'll remember the context of this one conversation, and it will mean that we have, I'd have people remind you of things I said to you 5 minutes ago. But it's almost like each new interaction is almost like it's like a fresh thing.
Yeah.
A big thing that we believe, in fact, I wouldn't say it's believe, I think it's just the truth. If we're ever going to have an AI that is going to make us, if we're ever going to leverage this super intelligence that we now have at our fingertips, it can only really do a great job for us if it knows a lot of the important things that we know. So, for example, you gave an example. Blake knows that he's a recruiter. It's in every fiber of his being. He knows, if he's going to, build the life and career that he wants for himself, he needs to remember that, right? It's just very intuitive to him. But that's not something that the AI always has top of mind. So that's really going to be the difference, which is in our world, when we think about helping people with precision, what are the pieces of context that it's most important that AI knows if it's going to contribute meaningfully to, an accurate recommendation of what to do next? That's not just, well, I know what you discussed in the conversation, which is it needs to include that. What happens in the conversation is really important for the AI to be aware of, but there are other things too. Maybe what happened in the conversation that you had with your client when you kicked off this role, and what is the relationship of that client to this role? Are they connected? Is this candidate so potentially as fit for that client? And if so, what were the things that the client said were most important to them? And did you then go and canonize that in a document of some sort, like a job description or an assessment criteria? And if so, can I have access to that as well, so I can understand and make sure you're not missing that the client said they need someone with, Golang experience. This candidate said they don't have it, yet you're about to submit them. Like, you probably shouldn't do that. And that's not sort of, frankly, augmenting your intelligence. It's more augmenting just your memory. Like, you're busy, they're dealing with multiple things per day, multiple clients. It's easy to get this stuff muddled up. Yes, you could go and check your documentation every time before you go and sort of submit a candidate to a client, but who wants to do that? And if you are doing that, you can now save yourself the time, because the AI is going to be able to either proactively or after a prompt come to you with that information. So that's the way you get to that accuracy, is you turn it from what is a bit of a, maybe what I describe as like a bit of a hot AI situation. Like, hey, help me come up with a decision on this candidate. Without much context, you're going to get a lot of almost like conjecture and almost like AI native rationalization of why I think you should hire this person that isn't actually relevant to the role or what the candidate told me. But if you can make it a bit of a colder judgment, it's more like, listen, I want you to help me. I've got all this information. I can't maintain every single bit of that in my brain all the time, but I can give you all of that context for what I'm looking for. You can know everything I've learned about this candidate, both through my conversations, but also maybe through their resume and their LinkedIn profile and whatever else I have. And just like help me connect some of these dots of the 20 candidates I've spoken to for this role in the last 2 days. That's what I mean. by precision, at least in the short term. That's the
and that's important, right? Like so yeah, I mean, you spoke about context window, right? Like so this kind of so the context window, or I like to put it as memory window because I think that's easier for probably everybody to understand, right? Like so the memory window is constantly expanding, right? Like if you look at ChatGPT 2.0 to ChatGPT or any of these foundational models now, right? Like the memory window has expanded, multifold, right? Like by, a couple of orders of magnitude. And we will, we are pretty close to, I think we've already crossed that stage where, some of the advanced models, their memory window is probably larger, much larger than what a single human's, a single human brain's memory window can possibly be, right? So that again, right, like opens up avenues and use cases that were probably just not possible earlier. Now, I want to kind of pivot this discussion into a little bit more practical, right? Like, Sahil, you're building at the forefront of this revolution, right? So, apart from what MetaView does, right? Like, hey, listen in on the conversation, give intelligence on those conversations, and like what other use cases, so let's say I'm an operator, I have zero, right? Like let's say I'm starting right at the zero. I think this is the year I'm going to start implementing AI in my search firm. How should, what are some of the use cases that I should start with? How should I think about my roadmap and implement, have a full-fledged, AI powered search firm by the end of this year, right? Like how should I go about it?
that for me.
Yeah, that's for you.
I mean, listen, happy to go sort of like beyond. The reason we started MetaView is because we believe the most important data in all of recruiting is in the conversations. And historically, you haven't been capturing it. So unfortunately, I am going to give an answer, and I'm going to do it honestly, which is the first thing you should do. I think it's irresponsible now for a recruiter not to be capturing the intelligence they're getting from candidates, the intel they're getting from candidates. So I do honestly believe that's the first thing you're going to do, right? Even frankly, the intel you're getting from clients, if you're sort of, obviously, I guess if you're starting from scratch, you'll start with BD and trying to get some clients and understand what they're looking for and what you promised them and all these things. So I do think capturing the conversational data is literally the first place to go. I mean, beyond that, I sort of have a lot of familiarity, obviously, with what MetaView's roadmap is. I'd be super curious of what Blake thinks around sort of other tools that have augmented. Obviously, you're going to end up spending a lot of. It sounds like you use Gemini to help with your sourcing, Blake. So I think exposure to a generalized AI assistant for general collateral creation, or essentially the things you can't predict. MetaView is going to have dedicated workflows for like almost the more predictable things that recruiters need to do. But some of the things Blake even mentioned in his answer of the things that keep him keep him up. Hey, putting together the Boolean string, or putting, getting a certain, maybe a piece of content he wants to get on LinkedIn. Like, it's not going to help with that stuff in the immediate term, to be honest. So I think making use of a generalized AI assistant makes a ton of sense. So your creativity can be augmented. So I think those are probably the two that I would think of as must-haves: is conversation tool like MetaView, but then also a more generalized tool that's a bit closer to the foundation model that you can use for general purposes.
Wonderful. That's a great answer, Blake. You are you're leading at the front, right? Like you are. And we spoke a couple of days back on a WhatsApp call. We discussed some brilliant use cases, but I want to understand, right, like all the different things that you're currently doing with AI, what you've done in the past, what has worked, what has not, and what do you plan on doing? Other use cases that you plan on implementing for the in the near future.
Yeah. So I've got like a top 10 list of like use cases for AI. So the low hanging fruit, like the first one that I think we all use it for was generating job descriptions, right? That's an easy one. Boolean strings, it's great for that because it's going to include all these words and phrases that, you probably weren't thinking of. I know my Boolean strings they're pretty simple, right? It's like one or two words, but you're getting like 50-word options out of AI. So it's really make sure you're not like missing anyone in your search. So it's good for that. I love the AI note taking and the meeting summaries. I've used MetaView. I've also used Apollo. Apollo's okay, but it doesn't necessarily compare to MetaView for recruiting because MetaView is, carefully designed for the recruiting community. So it breaks down your notes in that recruiter interview flow, which is really nice. Also, I love the relevancy scoring, and I'm trying to convince Manon, to go ahead and toss that in. I know they're working on it, but if you've got a list of 200 applicants to go through, I'd really love to be able to sort through, okay, who's the most relevant, which candidates score highest in the keyword matching for me, and let me start there. So, I'd love to leverage that. We had something similar to that at my last company, JobBot. They had a homegrown software that was also good. And Recruiter Flow, I love this new feature. It's the AI generated matches. You basically, you open a job order, put in the job and the specs or whatever, and you press go live, and then there's this button, find matches. And that's awesome, right? That saves a ton of time. So you can, start there and then do the Boolean searching and then, then go into LinkedIn. And then, there's also, when you're using the ATS CRM combo like Recruiter Flow that has an embedded AI, like our IRA, it's awesome because you can go in when you're on a candidate record and just have these conversations about the candidate, right? And this is really useful if you've got months and months and even years worth of notes that you've taken on your interactions with this candidate over that period of time. Right? You're like, oh, wait a minute, what were their salary expectations again? Instead of scrolling through and trying to find it, you just ask the AI, and it's like, oh, okay, here it is, boom. So that's a neat feature. Also love the AI generated candidate summaries, and we used to call them ditties. Like carefully wordsmithing this ditty, this summary of the candidate I'm going to put in the submission email to the client, right? And now you can do that with IRA, and it wants to give you a paragraph at first. I always ask it to give me a bullet point format, and use that. That's awesome. It's been really key for me to use Gemini for market research, right? If I'm going to like try to target a new industry, if a new company pops up and I'm like, check this out. Who's this company? Okay. Gemini, I'd like to know about this company and their top 25 competitors. I want to know, the year the company was founded, the company's headquarters, their headcount growth over the last 5 years, revenue growth, and how many jobs they have open. Give that to me in a table format. Boom. Now you've got a new industry that you can target, and you basically can have much more educated conversations with the candidates and the clients that you generate through your BD efforts. The other one, and I'm experimenting with this now, we'll see how it goes, is AI for AI sales agents for cold calls. And I'm experimenting with a product called Sales AI now. I've got the inbound agent that I think it's okay. If you call the phone number on my website right now, you're going to be talking to a friendly Southern gentleman named Walter. And he's going to walk you through, kind of guide you through. And if you say the right things, he's going to transfer your call straight to me, right? We're still tinkering with the outbound cold calling agent. We'll see how that goes. So far, it's been a bear trying to prompt engineer this conversation to go the way I want it to go. Definitely nowhere close to being comfortable. I think I have half the company trying to figure that out for me now. God bless their hearts. They're trying, but we'll see. I don't even know if it's capable of having legit, recruiter BD calls yet, but we're going to find out. That's something I'm going to tinker with over the next 3 months. And then, of course, the content. So creating content ideas, podcasting, podcast research on your guests. What questions should I ask? Cleaning up the podcast with Riverside. There's awesome features in there. Click buttons, fix the audio. Click buttons, take out all the gaps, the dead space. Feed that into Opus clips. Get, minute and a half to 3 minute clips, just like that. 20 options. There's your social media content for the next 2 weeks. So that's what I've found so far. I'm not building my own, agents yet. I don't have my own models. Like, I'm nowhere close to that. I'm not an AI guru by any means, but I am constantly tinkering, trying to find kind of how to leverage this to my benefit. But at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff I'm doing is still manual, right? Still a very human to human, manual relationship driven process. And, a lot of my success just still happens in the LinkedIn DMs. So, I don't want, I'm not going to depend on a bot to do that. I just haven't found one I'm comfortable with.
No, you are right? Like, this is I think Sal said that, right? Like one of the biggest asset that a recruiter has is her conversations, right? Like her relationships, the understanding that you can bring, right? Like about the industry, about the candidate, right? And it's that human touch is very, very necessary in our industry, but definitely AI helps. Now, this there is a couple of words that Blake mentioned, right? Like one was prompt engineering, and second was tinkering, right? Like this is not an easy thing to do, especially somebody who is not very technical, right? So I want to kind of throw this back to Sahil, right? Like Sahil, MetaView is amazing. So one thing that I want to say before I get into the question, right? Like Blake mentioned Ira, right? Like, so Ira integrates with MetaView Notes. So if you have MetaView and Recruiter Flow integrated, and you then, you can ask our AI bot about, anything, and it's going to go through MetaView Notes. And if there is an answer hidden in one of your MetaView Notes, it's going to find from there as well. But coming back to the question, right? Like, Sal, what are some of the, you talk to leaders, right? Like recruiting leaders all the time. I'm sure people come up with objections, right? Change is not always easy, right? What do you see as some of the biggest hindrances to, AI adoption right now?
I mean, there's some part of it is irrational, right? Some part of it is, and I don't mean irrational in terms of, some of it is truly irrational, like, oh, I just don't like change, therefore I don't want to sort of like open my mind there. I think there's another portion of it which is, somewhat rational, which is, well, hang on, if this is saving me so much time and it saves everyone on my team time, are we going to need as many people in the company? Which is, a very natural thing to think. The reason I would describe that as somewhat irrational is because it doesn't go the next step, which is you are not actually going to stop this flood. Like, this is going to become a thing. And therefore, by far, from like a game theory perspective, your best bet is to get familiar with this technology and learn how to orchestrate it and leverage it. That's because it's happening. You can't put the sort of the toothpaste back in the tube here. We are going to have access to this technology, and the people who are most effective at getting work done are going to be the people who leverage it. So I think there's a portion of that is resistance. I think that's reducing, to be honest with you, especially in recruiting. And I think one of the reasons recruiting has actually been, I think sometimes recruiting has, one of the sort of criticisms people might throw at the recruiting industry historically has been, hey, technology always comes to it like 10 years later than, sales or marketing or whatever. And I want to go, I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's true for a start. I also don't know why, if it is true, but I definitely haven't experienced that as in this wave, this wave. And I think that's because actually a lot of the most impactful AI and almost all the things Blake talked about are to do with making recruiting more human. And most of the people who are in recruiting, even if they fell into it, whether they sought a career in recruiting or fell into a career and stayed in it, the reason they stayed in it and were successful often is because the human aspects are what motivate them. and what drive them and what they're good at. I know when, we have recruiters, working for us at MetaView, the ones that I really value are the ones who bring some of that sheen, that soft touch to how we think, who are obsessing over, getting to know this candidate and the candidate experience, and sort of, in a maybe an indirect way, sort of, dragging out morsels of information that mean that we know them better or know how to close them. Like that's the gold that a recruiter brings to the table. And of course, a lot of the things that AI is doing now means that recruiters can focus a little bit more on that. So I think that's one of the reasons, well, a lot more actually, I would say, on that. So that's one of the reasons I think adoption has actually been pretty good, especially bottoms up. So especially actual recruiters who are spending a lot of the time on these tasks have been very open to AI, because it's meant they can focus more on the things that they get energized by, which is getting to know other human beings and almost doing like the amateur psychology of, what are they thinking? Are they a good fit for this? Will the hiring manager like them? This type of stuff, which is really fun. So I think it's been very positive on that front. I think maybe now the bit that maybe we will start to see more resistance is, because that's not really learning a new skill, right? I think the reason it was so easy to adopt it because it wasn't learning a new skill. It was actually dropping some of the skills, some of the things you had to do, which you didn't want to anyway. I think now we might be getting into a world where maybe there will be somewhat more resistance. I think maybe the ROI will be even higher as well, but there'll be resistance because it's going to require learning new skills. To put it another way, Manan, you mentioned, Blake in his answer talked about how prompting and tinkering. I think a lot of the most successful products so far, apart from the chat agents, haven't required that. The whole point is it's seamlessly come into your workflow. Your life is just better. And I hope everything MetaView ever does is that simple, but that's not always realistic. If you want a tool that actually, is very focused on making Blake and his team super powered, sometimes they might need to actually adjust some of the weights and change this variable and say, this is not important to me. I care more about this. And I think that's where you are getting to it being a little bit more of a technical skill to understand how to leverage AI. We see that in our product all the time, where like one of the, and we've had it for a long time now, and it's a very popular feature, but I almost can't believe that everyone isn't using it, because they should be, which is you can actually instruct the AI how you want your notes taken. So you can say, listen, based for this client, I always want the notes in this format with this stuff at the top. This needs to be a number. This needs to be a range from 1 to 5. This needs to be, then I want every company that you can tell the AI to do that. And it's our job to work out really easy ways for you to tell the AI that, maybe we should have a voice agent. Maybe you should be able to just talk to it, or maybe you should be able to design it by a drag and drop to do it. I don't know. Right now, you just have to like create the prompts to tell it in different sections. And again, it's really popular, but not everyone's doing it. And I think that's an interesting like maturity curve question where, 80% of people are happy with the default thing, when in reality, they get a lot more value if they sort of put in that additional, upfront effort to learn how to tinker, frankly, with MetaView as well. So I do think that it's not resistance to adopting in our case. We're very lucky in that way because we have this seamless, it just improves your quality of life as a recruiter very quickly. Whenever I speak to other AI founders, I will tell them, because of that, we've really benefited from that. I will often advise them, like, look for something that you can seamlessly sit alongside to start with, as opposed to rely on the tinkering, because your time to value just massively reduces. But then I think to go to the next level, I think that tinkering is going to be important.
You're right. My personal experience, right, like has been, so two AI models that I use the most are Gemini and Meta's Meta AI. It takes a few questions, right? Like, hey, no, I don't want this. This is what I want, right? Like, no, that's not what I meant, but this is what I want, right? Like a few iterations for even the best of the models to get it right. And on a busy day, you probably don't have as much patience required to be able to do that. But once you figured out, right, like how to prompt your AI engines, right? Like I think your kind of return curve on that effort just shoots up drastically, right? Like there is a little bit of upfront effort required, but the returns just shoot up drastically once you cross that threshold. And that's been my experience. I I would categorize myself as fairly technical. But even then, right, like it took a little bit of time for me to figure out what's the right way for me to prompt these models. Um, like your personal experience, right? Like you mentioned that there is a lot of tinkering and prompt engineering that you do stops a lot of people in their tracks, right? Like when they're first trying to figure out AI. How you don't come from a very technical background, right? Like how did you overcome that hurdle, right? Like and how what was your experience and journey around this?
Yeah, so I'm a YouTube junkie. I'm always watching YouTube, and there's 115 videos in my watch later list, and it's a lot of the AI stuff. So I'm watching, I'm listening, I'm learning. I see something, I'll test it. But what really kind of caught my attention and why I actually purchased the paid subscription to Gemini is I came across this Instagram account. This kid, he was doing this year challenge every day. He was going to ask Chat GPT what he should do to make $1 million. And, Chat GPT said at first it was like, hey, go around your neighborhood and clean people's gutters. Just go door to door and offer to clean their gutters. And then it was like by day 16, he had already made $10,000 and he had already started like this multi-service subcontracting firm. And ever since then, I can't find his account. I wish I could, but that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to pay for the upgraded version of Gemini, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to start telling it everything about me, everything about my business. I want to know my assets, my liabilities, my family, my goals, my strengths, my weaknesses. And I just gave it everything. And then I was like, hey, based on everything I just told you, what should I do today? But what was funny is it gave me this long list of stuff, and it was everything I was already doing. I was like, okay, well, okay, great. So that backfired, but still, I'm still like tinkering with that, and sometimes I'll get some nuggets from it. But where I see AI having the most impact this year, excuse me, is I think companies are gonna, more and more, if they haven't already, they're gonna start leveraging these AI agents to engage with their applicants. There's gonna be this different candidate experience that the applicants are gonna receive versus, the passive job seekers that you actually have to go headhunt, right? So for the applicants, you can definitely, especially if the company's seeing a high volume of applicants, and everybody is now, right? You post a job, you have 1,000 applicants in 3 days. So there's a big use case there. No job seeker likes to feel like they're stuck in the resume black hole, right? So an AI bot can kind of step in when somebody applies. Hey, okay, what's the relevancy score here? Oh, it's 70%. They're missing one thing. All right, let's send them a text, see if they got this one knockout question. Oh, they've got that. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and schedule them for an interview. Maybe it's an AI interview, maybe it's a human. And then, if they don't meet the standards, maybe the AI can just go ahead and say, hey, look, thanks for applying. You're not a fit for the role because this, and this, but keep an eye out because you could be a fit for these other roles based on your profile, and just go ahead and let the candidate down. Nobody has to sit in the resume black hole. And then more companies are going to test out the AI interview agents, and they're probably going to take over a lot of the first round interviews. Not really know if that's a great idea. From my experience, when I tried that, you're going to lose half your candidate pool when you do that, because half the candidates are just going to choose not to participate, especially all the passive job seekers that, were mildly interested in exploring the opportunity. You're going to lose those people. Well, so there's an opportunity cost there, but do the benefits outweigh the leakage, of candidates, right? If you can fill all your jobs anyway, then who cares? And the other one is the one-way video interviews that are even could be instant interviews, especially for more high volume, like, for a retail company, or walking through the department store, they're hiring, people in the department store. Oh, scan the QR code, ask some knockout questions, maybe do an instant video interview, and then boom, you're off to the races there. And there's another thing I'm paying attention to, which is like the AI interview agents that can actually score somebody on their soft skills. Right now, all these agents, they're just taking a transcript of the words that you're saying and they're doing matching and evaluating that, but they're not looking at you. They're not hearing your inflection in your voice, right? Some of these companies, I'm trying to get this guy on the podcast now that runs Interactive IQ. They can actually evaluate culture fit. There's another company called My Credibility, and they can basically tell if the candidate is lying or not. They can tell if your video reference, they can score it based on truthfulness, like a polygraph. So, all these things, they may happen. There's another idea that this guy I had on a podcast, his name's Daniel Miesler, and he described this idea of the Astra score, right? And he said shitty versions of this would come out this year, but there will be a time whenever AI, candidates can basically participate, and they can choose to participate in this multi-day, like really comprehensive interview where an AI would like assess your capabilities as a human being, like from your culture fit, your preferences, what you're capable of, technical abilities, all this stuff. And at the end of this 3 to 5 day interview, it's going to give you this 75-page report, then give you an Astra score. And then that could be used as your resume and as your, help you match to jobs. And then companies may be able to rely on that to just do a one and done. Oh man, their Astra scores is 97% for this job. All right, let's get them in and do the panel interview and thumbs up if they're good, if we like them or him or her, let's hire them. So, all that being said, I don't know what that means for the recruiting community, but I do know that, for passive job seekers, I think you're still going to need a good old fashioned headhunter. You can't take that away. There's still going to be a place for the like headhunters that specialize in recruiting talent from your competitors, right? An AI bot is just not going to be able to do that, I don't think.
Yeah, no, there is so much to unpack, and there are some really kick-ass use cases right there, right? Like whether they're possible today or not, how good they will be. Of course, that remains a question. I think there is this product that I saw the other day. One of our customers introduced me to them called. I can be wrong on the name, but I think it was called Hey Milo, which is like an AI interview taker, and takes your interview, and I think it's for high volume kind of role. So I can be wrong, but if that's something that's interesting to you, you can.
I looked into Hey Milo and also evaluated Vuitton AI. I like the folks over there, and their product was pretty good. And they seem to be, they're growing like gangbusters right now. So companies are eating it up.
Yeah, no, I'm not surprised. One thing, right, like is also there is a cultural shift in terms of how you look at interacting with AI, right? Like, I mean, it's cultural shifts don't come fast, right? Like, but so today it's probably very improbable that a candidate will actually engage with an AI agent, but we don't really know what would happen 5 years, 10 years down the road, because those people coming into workforce then, right? Like all most of their high school, they would have interacted with Gemini, Meta, ChatGPT, whatever models that they are using. So they are, our generation is called digital natives, right? Like their generation probably is going to be AI natives, and for them it won't be a very alienating experience to be screened by an AI agent, right? Like maybe not, right? Like who knows?
True.
But such what his right, like at one point of time, right? Like that there were these chatbots, right? Like this chatbots, support chatbots have become really, really fantastic in terms of their accuracy for, resolving a lot of support queries, right? Like, especially in a B2C kind of an environment. I remember, right, like people were like, hey, what, right? Like anybody who wants support is going to be, anxious, and they would want to talk to humans. And, this whole bot thing probably is not going to work out. But, hey, look at where we are today, right? Like majority of, interactions that you're going to have, right? Like at least the first interaction that you're going to have with pretty much any B2C product, right? Like whether that's Netflix, Amazon, whatever. Right? Like you're going to be speaking to a bot, and only if the bot is not able to resolve, right? Like if you're lucky, you're going to get to talk to a human. And I think it does a reasonably okay job, and most of us feel by now okay with it, right? Like so, behavior changes quite fast. Daphne, if you're still here, right? Like Daphne has mentioned. So those who are not able to see this, she writes, I use both MetaView and Recruiter Flow as a one-woman recruiter shop for the past year, and it has really been phenomenal. Almost 10 hires. I'm now finding the confidence to step out of my comfort zone and start creating campaigns in Recruiter Flow to maximize the candidates that I have for searches. And then there is, there is a question, right? Like, so definitely, while we will come back to your question, but if you, just raise your hand if you're okay to speak about, hey, how did MetaView and Recruiter Flow combo help you do this, right? Like, I think that can be instructional for a lot of people over here. Just raise your hand if you'd like to talk about it. I'll also go back to one of the objections that Sahil had raised, right? Like, and there was, hey, people have this irrational fear that, hey, if AI does so much, right? Like, will I really need my 10 people recruiting team? I think, but it's an irreversible kind of a phenomenon by now, right? Like, but I think there is another way of looking at it, right? Like, which is, if I'm able to reduce so much of, work for every recruiter that I have, right? Like, then maybe I'm able to increase the throughput of my recruiters, right? Like, hey, can they source 20% more? Can they have 10%? Can they, talk to 10% more candidates? Can they talk to 15% more clients? Right? Like, hey, if I increase my activity by 15%, right? Like, can I get a 10% increase in my revenue, right? Like, and that's, that's directly going to your bottom line, right? Like right there, right? Like, so I think so there is, two ways of looking at this: greed versus fear, right? So there's always a fear, but there is, a greed side of it as well and I mean greed in the most positive sense. And I'm seeing a lot of leaders thinking like that, and I think they are doing fantastic work. Guys, both Sahil and Blake are super active on LinkedIn. They are wonderful people, right? Like super approachable. So if you have any questions, follow them, connect with them. And thank you so much for joining us today.